The empath is about to enter the biggest comeback of their life. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung. If you felt drained, overlooked, or broken by your sensitivity, this message is for you. In today's episode of Spiritual Wisdom, we explore why the empath is standing at the edge of the greatest comeback of their life, and how you can apply these timeless Jungian principles to rise into your true power daily with clarity and confidence. As you listen, ask yourself, are you ready to stop hiding your strength and step into your transformation? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us grow together. 1. The empath's collapse is the catalyst for their comeback. Empaths have reached a deep internal threshold, not because they are weak, but because their souls are preparing for a return that can no longer be delayed. The exhaustion, the emotional overload, the quiet despair that settles into their everyday life are not signs of failure. They are signals from the unconscious that an inner transformation has already begun. Carl Jung taught that the psyche always speaks in symptoms before it speaks in clarity, and what the empath is experiencing now is not the end of their strength, but the shedding of an old identity that can no longer contain who they are becoming. This is the moment when the soul begins to call them back to their own center, away from years of living at the edge of themselves, away from survival-based sensitivity, and back towards something rooted, sovereign, and real. The fatigue the empath feels is not ordinary tiredness. It is the weight of carrying too many emotional burdens that were never theirs to hold in the first place. Their emotional overload is not instability. It is the nervous system releasing layers of unprocessed pain, grief, and responsibility absorbed from others. The despair that rises during quiet moments is not hopelessness. It is the grief of realizing how long they have lived outside their own boundaries. This is how spiritual awakening often begins, not with light, but with disillusionment. The unconscious dismantles the roles built for survival, so the soul can return to alignment. The empath begins to realize that what once felt like compassion has often been self-abandonment, and what once felt like love has often been emotional sacrifice. This inner collapse is not punishment. It is recalibration. As the psyche reorganizes, the empath begins to feel a subtle but unmistakable shift. Old emotional attachments loosen. People who once drained them begin to fall away without drama. The compulsion to explain, to rescue, to earn belonging through emotional labor slowly dissolves. This is not numbness. It is clarity. The sensitivity that once overwhelmed them becomes refined into discernment. Their intuition grows quieter but stronger. They begin to sense, often for the first time, what safety feels like inside their own body. Spirituality is no longer something they seek outside themselves through ideas or teachings. It becomes an embodied state, a daily awareness of energy, boundaries, and truth. The empath no longer leaks themselves into every space they begin to contain their presence. What looks like breakdown from the outside is actually the restructuring of the soul from the inside. Just as a seed must crack before it can reach the light, the empath's inner collapse is the sacred rupture that allows their real power to emerge. They are no longer motivated by approval, fear, or emotional hunger. Their nervous system begins to stabilize. Their choices become cleaner. Their relationships shift from intensity to resonance. This is not the return to who they used to be. It is the return to who they were before the world taught them to shrink, overgive, and disappear. The empath's comeback is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, grounded, irreversible. It is the moment when sensitivity transforms into strength, when awareness becomes authority, and when the soul finally stands upright inside itself. Are you ready to rise from this collapse into your greatest comeback? If so, comment below. I choose my comeback to declare your commitment to your transformation. 2. Their sensitivity was never the problem. It was the unclaimed power beneath it. Their sensitivity was never the problem. It was the unclaimed power buried beneath it, the kind of inner strength that grows in silence when no one is watching. For so long, empaths were taught to see their emotional depth as something to manage or hide, as if feeling deeply meant being too much, too fragile, or too complicated. But that sensitivity has always been a compass, guiding them toward truth, even when their mind didn't have the language for it. What others once labeled as fragility was actually intuitive intelligence, the kind of inner knowing that can sense shifts in a room, detect dishonesty without evidence, and feel the emotional temperature of a situation long before anyone speaks. Their emotional intelligence did not fade because it was weak. It dimmed because survival required it. When you grow up in environments where your empathy is inconvenient, where your emotions are misunderstood, or where your presence is used to absorb the pain of others, you learn to disconnect from your own inner signals just to get by. You learn to be the strong one, the quiet one, the understanding one, even when your own heart is overwhelmed. Yet beneath every moment you suppressed your feelings, parts of your spiritual development were quietly waiting, gathering wisdom, gathering courage, gathering the strength you would one day return to. As you step further into your spirituality, you start to recognize that your sensitivity was never a flaw. It was a form of guidance. The tightness in your chest around certain people was not overreaction. It was your intuition warning you. The heaviness you felt in certain spaces wasn't drama. It was your energy responding to misalignment. The tears you held back were not embarrassment. They were truth trying to move through you. You spent years trying to toughen up because the world told you that feeling deeply was a disadvantage. But now you see that the real disadvantage was ignoring the wisdom of your own body and heart. The very traits that made you feel different are the same traits that protect you, direct you, and help you distinguish between what nourishes your spirit and what drains it. Each time you honor a boundary, each time you say no instead of overgiving, each time you choose rest instead of pushing yourself for others, you reclaim a piece of that hidden power. This is where your true comeback begins, not in becoming someone harder or colder, but in becoming someone truer. You begin to set standards not from fear, but from clarity. You begin to walk away from people who expect your empathy, but offer none in return. You begin to listen to your emotional signals instead of silencing them, and life suddenly becomes easier to navigate, not more overwhelming. The patterns you once repeated out of survival overgiving, people-pleasing, absorbing others' pain, start to break the moment you understand they were never your destiny, only your conditioning. And as these patterns fall away, your spiritual development accelerates. You become more grounded, more discerning, more aligned with the quiet power that sensitivity has always carried beneath it. Through this return to yourself, you realize that the world never needed you to feel less. It needed you to understand the strength within your feelings. You see now that your sensitivity allows you to read truth beneath words, sense intentions behind actions, and recognize alignment long before logic catches up. You no longer apologize for the depth of your heart because you finally recognize the wisdom in it. Your empathy is still present, still powerful, but now it is guided by boundaries, self-respect, and awareness. You no longer give your energy away freely. You choose where it goes. And with every choice rooted in clarity rather than guilt, you rise into the version of yourself you were always meant to become, an empath who is no longer drained by the world, but empowered by the truth they can finally feel without fear. 3. The shadow awakens, and so does the warrior. You have spent so many years softening yourself just to keep the peace, silencing your anger, your truth, and your boundaries, because somewhere deep inside, you believed that being powerful might cost you love. But now, something ancient is stirring inside you, a quiet force rising from the unconscious. And as Carl Jung taught, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. What you are feeling is that darkness is finally reorganizing itself into strength. Your shadow is not attacking you. It is trying to return to you. The very parts of yourself you once rejected, your firmness, your instincts, your anger, your clarity, are no longer willing to stay buried. They are resurfacing not to harden you, but to complete you. You begin to sense the inner warrior, an archetype that has lived inside you all along, stepping forward with calm authority. It is the part of you that knows how to say no without guilt, how to walk away without fear, and how to protect your energy without losing your compassion. This is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming whole. As you listen more closely to your inner world, you realize that your sensitivity was never a weakness. It was preparation. Every time you absorbed too much, every moment you felt overwhelmed, every situation that forced you to hold pain without expressing it, these were not flaws. They were initiations into a deeper power you are only now beginning to reclaim. Your unconscious mind has been preparing you for this shift for years. It has been arranging your triggers, your heartbreaks, your patterns, and your synchronicities like spiritual signposts, guiding you back to yourself. The exhaustion you feel is not failure. It is your soul refusing to operate in the old way. The irritations you feel are boundaries trying to rise. The sudden moments when you want to pull back or say less are signals that your energy is reorganizing itself. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, your unconscious is demanding to be seen so it can finally stop directing your life in the shadows. In this awakening, your compassion and your boundaries finally learn to work together rather than cancel each other out. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't listen. You stop giving your energy to those who drain you. You stop holding space for situations that no longer honor your spirit. At first, this shift may feel like selfishness, but what you are truly experiencing is the beginning of deep self-respect. Lao Tzu reminds us, "He who conquers others is strong." He who conquers himself is mighty. You are learning to conquer yourself, not through force, but through alignment. Slowly, you feel your presence changing. People sense something different in you, even before you speak. Your energy becomes clearer, sharper, quieter, yet more powerful. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You no longer absorb emotions that aren't yours. You no longer apologize for your intuition or your truth. You become the version of yourself that your old self needed to feel safe. You no longer bleed emotionally just to keep a connection alive. Instead, you choose relationships where you don't have to abandon yourself to stay loved. This is the empath's true comeback, not a dramatic explosion of power, but a steady, undeniable rise of inner authority. Your nervous system rewires itself. Your voice deepens with truth. Your soul stands upright again. Through spiritual wisdom and the teachings of Carl Jung, you recognize that this transformation was never about becoming someone else. It was about remembering the part of you that you once hid. The warrior, the protector, the sovereign self who refuses to disappear again. Do you feel this awakening within you? If you do, declare it in the comments. My shadow awakens, and so does my inner warrior. 4. The return begins with disillusionment and emotional clarity. The return of the empath begins in the quiet spaces where truth finally rises to the surface, often disguised as discomfort, confusion, or emotional heaviness. It starts the moment you begin seeing through the illusions you once depended on to survive the soft lies you told yourself to keep the peace, the roles you accepted to be loved, the emotional masks you wore so others wouldn't feel threatened by your sensitivity. This is the moment when your inner world shifts and the veil falls away, revealing the subtle manipulations you tolerated, the energetic imbalances you absorbed, and the people who fed on your kindness without ever offering nourishment in return. It is jarring, like waking up suddenly from a deep sleep, because clarity always feels violent when you've spent years living inside someone else's expectations. Yet this very discomfort is the soul's signal that you are entering a higher stage of consciousness, the first step of spiritual awakening, where you no longer interpret intuition as anxiety or doubt, but as truth reclaiming its voice. And as this clarity sharpens, the psyche begins pulling you away from everything that required you to abandon yourself. Relationships built on unspoken pressure, environments where you were praised for silence but punished for honesty, situations where your empathy was treated as a tool rather than a gift. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And now, those words begin to echo inside you as you start noticing every pattern that once trapped you. You feel the difference between connection and attachment, between being needed and being valued, between giving out of love and giving because you were afraid to disappear. The truth is that harmony was never supposed to cost you your integrity, and peace was never meant to be purchased with your emotional labor. What looks like loss is actually your psyche releasing anything that cannot follow you into this higher version of yourself. This emotional clarity may break your heart before it heals it, because it forces you to confront how often you tolerated what drained you, forgave what hurt you, or normalized what violated your soul's boundaries. But this heartbreak is sacred. It is the breaking of the old identity that believed you had to earn your place in the world by overextending yourself. It is the moment when you stop apologizing for your sensitivity and start recognizing it as a precise internal compass. You begin to feel your energy tighten around truth and recoil from anything that distorts it. Your inner world, once crowded with noise, becomes a landscape of instinct. You no longer ask, "What is wrong with me?" Instead, you begin to ask, "Why did I force myself to carry what was never mine?" With every realization, you reclaim pieces of yourself you once gave away for approval, for safety, or for love that was built on conditions. And so, the empath's greatest comeback begins not with a dramatic rise, but with a subtle yet irreversible shift in identity. What once wounded you now awakens you. What once confused you now guides you. What once drained you now teaches you how to protect your energy with grace instead of guilt. This is the quiet revolution happening within your spirit the moment you stop living from fear and start living from inner truth. It is the moment the empath stops trying to belong everywhere and starts belonging deeply to themselves. This is how your soul returns home. 5. From absorbing emotion to embodying presence. Instead of absorbing everyone's emotions, you begin shifting into a state where your presence speaks louder than the chaos around you. The empath, who once acted like an emotional sponge, quietly transforms into someone who transmits authenticity rather than carrying the burdens of everyone else's sorrow or anger. Your energy, which used to leak outward because you tried to soothe, fix, or rescue, now starts circulating within your own body like a protected current. It becomes a sovereign emotional boundary that no longer allows others' moods or projections to flow into your inner world. You stop merging with people's pain and instead stand firmly in your own grounded awareness. And from this place, you finally understand that sensitivity does not mean self-sacrifice. As this shift deepens, you begin noticing the subtle difference between reacting automatically to the emotional climate around you and responding from a stable inner center. You feel more anchored in your breath, more aware of what is yours and what is not. And this awareness turns into a daily practice of spirituality, one that reinforces your spiritual development with every moment you choose to stay present instead of overwhelmed. The more your energy remains within your own field, the more your body learns to trust you again. You no longer collapse under the weight of someone else's stress, and you no longer lose yourself trying to maintain harmony at the expense of your peace. Instead, you become a calming force, not by absorbing negativity, but by refusing to let it dictate your emotional state. This new way of being creates a natural shield around your heart. It is not a wall that blocks connection, but a clear boundary that allows you to care without losing yourself. You can listen deeply without drowning, and you can love without carrying burdens that were never meant for you. You begin choosing conversations that nourish you instead of draining you, and you give yourself permission to walk away from situations where your intuition whispers, "This is too heavy for your spirit." Slowly, your identity shifts from being the one who heals everyone to being the one who honors their own wholeness. You no longer need to earn love by proving how much pain you can absorb. As your presence grows stronger from within, people feel it. You arrive in a room differently quieter, steadier, more aligned. Your energy does not shrink or scatter like before. Instead, it radiates a grounded confidence that calms others without trying. You are no longer moved by every emotional wave because you have become the shore. And in this state of rooted awareness, powerful lessons reveal themselves. Protecting your energy is not selfish, but necessary. Saying no is an act of integrity, not rejection. Your worth is not measured by how much emotional labor you can carry, and the world needs your clarity far more than it needs your exhaustion. You now understand that the true purpose of your sensitivity was never to absorb everything it was, to help you embody presence, truth, and emotional sovereignty. And the moment you begin living this way, every part of your life starts to shift into harmony with who you were always meant to be. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who is learning to transform emotional weight into a powerful presence. Let's continue this journey together and explore what it truly means to embody your deepest spiritual wisdom. 6. Sovereignty replaces compliance. Sovereignty replaces compliance when you finally rise from the years you spent bending yourself into shapes that were never meant for you. And in this return to your center, you begin to understand that your empathy was never designed to be a leash others could pull, but a compass guiding you back to your own spiritual wisdom. You stop abandoning yourself to keep the peace, and instead, you act from a deep internal alignment where your truth becomes your anchor, your safety, and your direction. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And this is exactly what begins to unfold within you as your inner authority awakens and the habit of pleasing others loses its grip. You start noticing how much of your life was shaped not by your desires, but by fear. Fear of disappointing someone, fear of being misunderstood, fear of conflict, and now you replace that fear with clarity. Your no becomes sacred, no longer sharp or defensive, but steady and intentional. A simple declaration that your time, energy, and emotional space matter. You say no, not to reject others, but to stop rejecting yourself. And this shift quietly transforms everything. Your voice follows this evolution. It becomes calm and unshakable, not loud or forceful, but rooted in truth. And when you speak, people hear the difference. You do not over-explain. You do not shrink. You do not try to make your boundaries sound softer so someone else won't be upset. Instead, you speak from the part of you that finally trusts itself. This doesn't work for me. I am not available for this. I need space. These simple sentences carry more power than all the years you spent apologizing for your own needs. Jung also reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And as you become more aware of your old patterns, self-sacrifice, overgiving, chronic empathy, you begin to reclaim the pieces of yourself that were lost in all the times you tried to be everything for everyone. The more you honor this inner alignment, the more your energy changes. People can feel it. Your presence becomes clearer, brighter, harder to manipulate, and those who once depended on your compliance begin to realize they can no longer feed on your silence. You are no longer emotionally available to chaos, no longer responsible for fixing what others refuse to take accountability for, no longer willing to shrink so someone else can feel taller. Instead, you choose honesty over approval, clarity over guilt, and authenticity over performance. Your compliance once felt like safety, but now you understand the price you paid. Every time you swallowed your truth to keep peace outside, you created conflict inside yourself, and that inner war drained your spirit more than any disagreement ever could. Now, your comeback is guided by sovereignty, the kind of sovereignty that does not shout, but stands firm, that does not demand, but declares, that does not chase, but chooses. You are no longer controlled by external expectations. You are guided by internal truth. You no longer let empathy be used as a weapon against you. You refine it into discernment, letting you love without losing yourself. And with each boundary you honor, you rebuild the trust between you and your own soul. This is where your power returns, not in dominance, but in alignment. Not in rebellion, but in remembering. Not in resisting others, but in no longer resisting yourself. 7. The transformation heals not just the self, but the lineage. The transformation heals not just the self, but the lineage. Because when you step into your own healing, you are doing something that echoes far beyond your individual life. You are breaking cycles that were passed down quietly through generations. Cycles of silence, fear, emotional suppression, and unspoken pain that shaped your family long before you were born. This journey is not just personal, it is ancestral and collective. Because as you evolve, you do not simply change your own patterns. You shift the emotional code of your entire bloodline. As the empath heals, they release generational trauma and emotional contracts that were never consciously chosen. Contracts such as carrying everyone's emotions to keep the peace, shrinking yourself to avoid conflict, or absorbing the family's unprocessed grief so others could continue functioning. These patterns often show up early in life, and you may remember being the child who felt everything too deeply, the one who could sense tension before anyone spoke, the one who soothed others even while hurting inside. But in the language of spirituality and spiritual awakening, this sensitivity was never a weakness. It was your initiation into becoming the one who ends what has been repeated for too long. When you choose to heal, it is not just your pain that rises. It is the pain of those who came before you, the pain that they were never allowed to express. And as you feel it moving through you, something remarkable happens. Those silent ancestral wounds begin to loosen their grip, as if your courage gives permission for the entire lineage to finally breathe. This is why your healing often feels heavier than your own life story. Why tears sometimes come from places you cannot name. And why certain emotions feel ancient rather than personal, because they are. Every time you choose honesty over silence, boundaries over self-sacrifice, presence over avoidance, you break one more thread in a web of inherited suffering. Slowly, the empath becomes a new archetype, not the wounded healer who endlessly gives while silently bleeding, but the sovereign soul who understands their power, their limits, and their purpose. Sovereignty for the empath is not about becoming cold or detached. It is about choosing a connection that is mutual, emotional labor that is shared, and relationships that respect your inner truth. This shift requires you to let go of the identity of the one who is always overwhelmed, always drained, always carrying others, and to step into the identity of someone who carries themselves first, someone who protects their energy, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. As this transformation deepens, you may notice that certain people begin to fall away, not because you have changed for the worse, but because the old emotional contracts can no longer survive the light of your new clarity. This can feel uncomfortable, even lonely, but it is a sacred clearing, a spiritual pruning that makes space for healthier, more aligned connections to grow. The deeper your healing goes, the more you realize how much of your old life was built around emotional survival rather than genuine fulfillment. You start to see that you were not too sensitive. You were carrying too much that did not belong to you. You were not overreacting. You were responding to emotional truths others refused to face. You were not weak. You were overwhelmed by the weight of multiple generations. And as you shed what is not yours, you begin to feel your own energy returning to you in waves. Your intuition sharpens. Your presence strengthens. Your boundaries become clearer, and your inner world becomes calmer. This is the moment when the empath steps fully into their sovereignty, becoming someone who no longer chases approval, no longer absorbs chaos, and no longer bends themselves into silence just to maintain harmony. Instead, you begin to walk with a sense of inner authority, knowing that your healing is not just a personal victory, but a gift offered to your lineage and to the collective psyche. In this state of sovereign empathy, you become a quiet force of transformation. Your presence naturally encourages others to rise. Your clarity disrupts old dysfunctions, and your courage becomes the pattern breaker your family never had. You embody what Carl Jung meant when he said that what is not made conscious is lived out as fate, because you are choosing to make conscious what your ancestors were forced to suppress. And through every boundary you honor, every truth you speak, and every emotion you allow to move through you, you rewrite the story, not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. Are you ready to break old cycles and become the one who heals the line that came before you? If this message speaks to your journey, leave a comment with the words, "I heal my lineage." Let this be your affirmation, your declaration that your growth is no longer just for you, but for every soul connected to you. 8. The final stage, living the comeback in quiet power. The final stage of your journey is when you step into a quiet power so steady and rooted that you no longer feel obligated to prove yourself, explain your feelings, or carry the emotional weight of others. Your transformation becomes something far deeper than insight. It becomes embodiment, the kind of spiritual maturity that radiates through your presence, your decisions, and your energy without you needing to announce a single word. Your life begins to shift because you shift. Your frequency changes, and the world responds. You no longer rush to rescue or overextend yourself because you now understand that your worth has never been tied to sacrifice. And every time you honor your boundaries, you are honoring your own spiritual development. You stop absorbing the chaos of others because you finally recognize what belongs to you and what never did. And with that clarity, your nervous system settles, your intuition sharpens, and your inner world becomes a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. This quiet strength makes you unshakable, allowing you to move through life with a calm certainty that does not waver in the presence of other people's expectations, projections, or emotional storms. You become discerning, able to sense instantly who supports your growth and who drains your spirit. And this discernment shapes the relationships you choose, the spaces you enter, and the energy you allow into your life. Life begins aligning itself with your new frequency as you naturally attract peace, truth, and people who respect the depth you carry. You find yourself explaining less, justifying less, and defending less, not because you are distant, but because you finally understand that your path does not require validation. You no longer chase being understood. You simply live in a way that reflects who you truly are. The comeback becomes clear. It is not a dramatic moment of applause, but a destiny unfolding from within, a profound return to the center of yourself. In this stage, every choice you make holds power because it comes from a healed place. You choose honesty over people-pleasing, alignment over old patterns of self-betrayal, and peace over the familiar pull of emotional chaos. You begin to see that your sensitivity is not a burden, but a spiritual gift, a compass guiding you toward environments that nurture your soul instead of draining your spirit. You are no longer tempted to shrink or dim yourself to make others comfortable. Instead, you rise quietly, steadily, with a deep sense of self-respect that becomes impossible to ignore. And as your life reflects this inner alignment, you learn the truths that carry you forward. Honoring your energy is sacred. Your soul does not require saving by others. And your destiny unfolds strongest when you stop abandoning yourself. This is the quiet comeback, the moment when you live from your truth so fully that life cannot help but transform around you. As we close this message, remember this truth. Your comeback isn't waiting somewhere in the distance. It has already begun within you. The signs, the synchronicities, the inner restlessness, they are all guiding you back to your true center, to the power you abandoned long ago, but never truly lost. This is your season of return, renewal, and rising, and every step you take from here is a step toward the life your soul has been preparing you for. If this message from Spiritual Wisdom spoke to your heart, make sure to like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss any of our upcoming teachings. Your journey is just beginning, and I'm honored to walk it with you. People with no friends often carry these hidden Jungian traits, a rare kind of depth. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Carl Jung once said, "In today's world, where social circles often define worth, those who walk alone are often misunderstood, yet within their solitude lies an extraordinary depth. These people aren't broken or incomplete. They're tuned to a rare frequency that few can truly comprehend." In this video from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore the hidden Jungian traits that shape such rare souls traits that reveal inner strength, depth, and spiritual awakening. As you listen, reflect on your own journey. Do you see yourself in these signs? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's grow together toward greater self-awareness and peace. 1. Authenticity over approval. People with few or no friends often live guided by the quiet authority of their soul, rather than the noise of social approval. They do not mold themselves to fit the expectations of others because they have reached a stage in their spiritual awakening where authenticity becomes more important than belonging. The deeper they dive into their inner world, the less interested they become in shallow conversations, false harmony, or conditional acceptance. As Carl Jung observed, the more one returns to their own being, the smaller their circle becomes. This is not rejection of the world, it is liberation from illusion. These individuals no longer crave validation because their worth no longer depends on how many people surround them, but on how aligned they are with their inner truth. Living authentically means facing both the light and the shadow within. People who walk this path know that true spirituality is not about pretending to be pure. It's about integrating every aspect of oneself with honesty and compassion. They stop chasing approval because they realize that every time they hide their truth, a part of their soul dims. Through solitude, they begin to hear the voice of their higher self more clearly. They learn that silence is not emptiness, but sacred space, where the universe whispers guidance. While others avoid being alone out of fear, these individuals find peace in it. Solitude becomes their teacher, refining their energy, sharpening their intuition, and grounding their sense of purpose. As their consciousness deepens, they begin to sense energy on a more subtle level. They can feel when someone's words and intentions are misaligned. They no longer engage in gossip, drama, or relationships that drain their energy, because their spirit naturally rejects anything that lowers their vibration. This is a mark of spiritual wisdom. They move through life not seeking to be understood, but to stay true. The journey of spiritual awakening teaches them to recognize that not all connections are meant to last, and not all companionships are aligned with their higher path. What may appear as isolation from the outside is often expansion from within, as their soul grows beyond the boundaries of superficial existence. Their authenticity gives them a quiet magnetism. They attract others who live with the same depth, those who understand the language of silence and the beauty of truth. Yet even in connection, they maintain inner freedom. They do not need others to complete them, for they have already found home within themselves. Spirituality, for them, is not about escaping the world, but living in it with integrity. They have discovered that when they stop chasing people, life naturally brings them those who resonate with their energy. When they no longer seek approval, they begin to attract genuine love. Every act of authenticity becomes an offering to their higher self. Every step taken in truth becomes an act of courage. The more they honor who they are, the lighter they feel, as if the weight of pretension slowly dissolves. They realize that having few or no friends does not mean they are unloved. It means they are evolving. They are choosing peace over performance, purpose over popularity, and depth over distraction. This is the rare kind of strength that only those on a true spiritual awakening path can understand. The strength to stand alone, guided not by the applause of the world, but by the wisdom of the soul. If this message resonates with your soul, take a moment to honor your authenticity. Comment below, "I choose authenticity over approval," to affirm your commitment to living as your true self. 2. Solitude as a path to self-discovery. Solitude is not a punishment. It is an invitation to meet the deepest layers of yourself. When you walk alone, you are not rejecting the world. You are simply returning to the essence of who you are beyond all noise, all labels, and all expectations. In the quiet, when the voices of society fade, you begin to hear the whisper of your own truth. You start to see the difference between what the world told you to be and what your soul has always known you are. This is not isolation, it is refinement. It is the sacred moment when you stop being shaped by the external and start being guided by your inner wisdom. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Those who live in solitude are often the ones awakening not from life, but into life. They are the ones who dare to confront themselves fully, to sit with their shadows, and to find peace in their own company. They no longer chase validation, for they understand that true worth is born from inner alignment, not external approval. In solitude, you stop running toward others to fill your emptiness and instead begin to fill yourself with presence, awareness, and love. That is where spirituality truly begins, when you realize that peace is not something you find out there, but something you cultivate within. Solitude sharpens your perception. You start to sense energy, not just words. You recognize the difference between people who feed your soul and those who drain it. You learn to walk away quietly from what no longer serves your spirit, because you have learned the beauty of being enough for yourself. This stage of spiritual development is sacred. It is the phase when the universe shields you from distractions so that your inner foundation can grow strong. While others may misunderstand your silence, you begin to understand that your energy is sacred and not everyone deserves access to it. In this stillness, something profound awakens. Creativity flows like a river. Insight deepens like roots, and your heart begins to expand with compassion and clarity. You stop fearing solitude because you realize it's not emptiness, it's space. Space for healing, for listening, for aligning with your higher purpose. The person who embraces solitude becomes a vessel of peace, radiating quiet strength that needs no explanation. They embody depth, not noise, truth, not performance. To walk alone is not to be lonely, it is to be whole. It is to know that your path may not be crowded, but it is divinely guided. You begin to live from the inside out, led by intuition instead of impulse, grounded in faith instead of fear. And in that sacred quiet, you discover what all spiritual seekers eventually learn, that the greatest companionship you will ever have is the presence of your own awakened soul. 3. Emotional and energetic discernment. People with few or no friends often carry a kind of emotional and energetic discernment that most of the world cannot see. They are not distant because they are cold or judgmental, but because they feel life more deeply than others. They sense energy before words, intentions before actions, and truth before explanation. This level of awareness is not something they learned. It's something they were born with, a form of spiritual wisdom that grows stronger as they evolve. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For these people, becoming authentic means being selective about where they place their energy, who they allow near their hearts, and what kind of vibrations they let into their space. Their small circle is not a sign of emptiness. It's a reflection of their high standards for emotional honesty, mutual respect, and genuine resonance. You might notice that when such people walk into a room, they instantly read the energy without a single word being spoken. It's not judgment, it's intuition. Their inner compass knows who is aligned with truth and who is hiding behind masks. They can feel when someone's smile carries tension, when a conversation feels heavy, or when a person's words don't match their frequency. That sensitivity, though often misunderstood, is their greatest protection. It's what keeps them from staying in places that drain them, or with people who disguise manipulation as kindness. Jung believed that as one becomes more conscious, their circle naturally shrinks, not out of arrogance, but necessity. The more awakened your spirit becomes, the less you tolerate anything that feels false or forced. Solitude, then, becomes a sanctuary rather than a punishment, a space where your energy can breathe and your soul can speak. These individuals don't sever ties out of pride. They simply stop feeding what no longer grows. They choose depth over distraction, peace over popularity, and authenticity over approval. Their relationships are built not on convenience, but on frequency. They crave conversations that nourish the mind, silences that feel comfortable, and connections that honor both truth and boundaries. They've learned that not everyone deserves access to their energy, because energy is sacred currency. It shapes your life far more than words ever could. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Through their discernment, these people bring the unconscious to light. They see through charm to intention, through noise to truth, through illusion to essence. Their path may appear lonely, but in truth, it is rich with meaning. They are not running from people, they are returning to themselves. Every time they choose silence over chaos, they refine their frequency. Every time they walk away from what feels off, they protect the sacred harmony of their inner world. In a society addicted to validation and constant connection, such self-trust is revolutionary. It takes strength to say no without guilt, to honor your intuition even when others don't understand, and to embrace solitude as a sign of alignment rather than absence. These souls embody what spiritual wisdom truly means: the ability to stay centered in truth, to recognize energy as the language of the soul, and to guard that energy fiercely, not out of fear, but out of love for who they are becoming. Now, take a deep breath and center your energy. Feel the calm within you. Open your heart to clarity, to truth, and to the strength of discernment that protects your spirit. Repeat after me. I trust my intuition, and I only allow peaceful energy into my life. 4. Inner sovereignty and psychological maturity. They carry within them a sacred form of strength that does not need to be seen or approved by others to exist. It is a quiet fire that burns deep within their soul, guiding them through life without the need for validation or applause. Their foundation is built upon values that come from within, not from the ever-shifting expectations of society. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are," and that truth lives vividly inside them. While others may chase acceptance, they follow their own inner compass, walking paths that are not always popular, but always authentic. This independence is not rebellion, it is alignment, a reflection of deep spirituality and the maturity that comes from knowing one's essence. They have walked through the silence long enough to realize that their solitude is not a prison, but a sanctuary where they meet their truest self and experience a profound spiritual awakening. Their energy is calm, yet unshakable, for it is not built on ego, but on understanding. When faced with adversity, they do not seek comfort from the crowd. Instead, they turn inward, drawing power from their inner stillness. They know that transformation does not happen in comfort, but through solitude and reflection, where the soul begins to shed its false layers and stand naked in truth. This is the strength that cannot be taught, only discovered. They have learned that spiritual wisdom is not found in external noise, but in the silent whispers of the heart. Through quiet introspection, they begin to understand that life's greatest journey is not outward toward more connections or possessions, but inward toward peace, awareness, and divine presence. Those who possess such inner sovereignty live with psychological maturity that is rare in this world. They are not easily manipulated by trends, gossip, or emotional turbulence because their identity is rooted in something far deeper than their alignment with spirit. This maturity shows up in their ability to remain grounded even when others lose themselves in comparison, judgment, or chaos. They know who they are, and because of that, they cannot be shaken. They no longer depend on external validation to feel worthy. They have already met their worth within. Their solitude has become their teacher, their silence a friend, and their stillness a mirror reflecting the eternal truth that lies beyond fear and desire. In spirituality, this state of being marks the awakening of the soul when one realizes that true freedom is not found in belonging to the world, but in belonging to oneself. They understand that solitude does not mean disconnection, but sacred union with the divine energy that flows through all things. Through spiritual awakening, they come to see that their independence is not loneliness, but liberation. Their calm presence speaks louder than words because it carries the vibration of authenticity, peace, and depth. They move through life gently, with compassion and clarity, not needing to control or prove, simply being. And in that state of being, they embody what Jung called individuation, the full integration of self and spirit, the marriage between human experience and divine wisdom. To stand in one's own light without fear, to walk alone without feeling lost, to choose truth over acceptance, this is the essence of inner sovereignty. It is the highest form of spiritual maturity, where you no longer live to be understood, but to understand, no longer chase love, but become love itself. They have learned that power does not come from control, but from surrender. And peace is not the absence of noise, but the presence of awareness. In a world addicted to distraction, their stillness becomes revolutionary, a reminder that the soul's greatest strength lies not in having many around you, but in having yourself fully within you. 5. Introspection and self-awareness. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." Those who have few or no friends often embody this truth more deeply than most. They spend long periods in quiet reflection, exploring their inner world, rather than seeking constant distraction in external noise. This solitude becomes a sacred classroom where they begin to understand the language of their soul. In silence, they learn to observe their emotions, question their habits, and recognize the patterns that shape their thoughts and behaviors. Instead of resisting their loneliness, they transform it into self-awareness. And that self-awareness becomes the foundation of their spiritual development. They do not run from their shadows. They face them, integrating their fears, wounds, and hidden desires until they emerge more whole and self-possessed. When you live with fewer social ties, you have the space to listen deeply to yourself, to life, and to the subtle whispers of intuition. You begin to realize that every quiet moment carries a message, and that peace is not the absence of noise, but the presence of understanding. This is the essence of true spirituality, not a search for something outside of you, but a return to what has always been within. As you continue this path of introspection, you notice that your values shift. You no longer crave constant company or validation. You crave truth, depth, and resonance. You seek people who see beyond appearances and connect with your essence. And because such souls are rare, your circle naturally becomes smaller, but far more meaningful. This transformation is not always easy. The world often misunderstands solitude as sadness, mistaking introspection for isolation. Yet in truth, it is the opposite. In your stillness, you begin to discover strength and inner power that no one can give or take away. You develop emotional intelligence, empathy, and an ability to stay calm amidst chaos. You stop reacting impulsively and start responding with awareness. The more you know yourself, the less external chaos can disturb your inner peace. This quiet confidence radiates through your energy, changing how you experience life and how life responds to you. As your spiritual development deepens, you start to see solitude not as emptiness, but as richness. It becomes the soil in which wisdom grows. In this sacred silence, your creativity blossoms, your mind clears, and your intuition sharpens. You no longer chase after belonging because you have already found it within yourself. You realize that real companionship begins when you are no longer afraid of being alone. Each silent moment becomes a mirror reflecting your growth. Each breath a reminder that peace was never outside. It was always waiting for you to return home to yourself. Don't forget to subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights on how deep introspection and self-awareness can transform loneliness into profound spiritual growth and inner peace. 6. Spiritual growth through individualization. The process of individuation, as described by Carl Jung, is not a path for the faint of heart. It is the courageous act of breaking away from the collective to discover the truth of who you are beneath all the noise, expectations, and illusions of the world. Those who often walk alone are not antisocial or broken. They are souls undergoing one of life's most sacred transformations. They are choosing depth over comfort, authenticity over conformity, and silence over superficial noise. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that is precisely what solitude allows space for the self to unfold without interference. In the quiet, you begin to meet your real self, stripped of performance and pretense. You realize that being alone is not loneliness. It is a holy space where your soul speaks in a voice the world cannot hear. In solitude, the spiritual awakening begins to take root. You start to see that the absence of people is not a loss, but a clearing and opening that invites divine truth to enter. What feels like emptiness is actually expansion. What feels like detachment is purification. As you walk further into silence, your inner voice grows stronger. You begin to confront your shadows, those hidden aspects of your psyche that you once feared. Jung called this the process of integrating the unconscious, and through it, you reclaim your wholeness. You learn that healing is not about becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. The solitude that once felt heavy now becomes your teacher, your mirror, and your sacred ground for transformation. People with no friends often carry this rare kind of depth, because they have spent time exploring the inner world that most avoid. They understand the weight of their emotions, the beauty of stillness, and the power of silence. They are not impressed by appearances or empty validation. They crave truth, meaning, and alignment. They find companionship in books, in art, in nature, and in their connection with the divine. Henry David Thoreau once said, "I never found a companion that was so companionable as solitude, and that wisdom echoes through every soul that walks alone, yet feels deeply connected to everything." As this journey unfolds, you start to see that solitude is not a punishment, but a purification. The more you detach from external noise, the clearer your inner guidance becomes. You develop emotional strength, energetic balance, and spiritual independence. You no longer chase love, you attract it. You no longer seek belonging, you embody it. You no longer fear solitude, you thrive in it. This is the essence of spiritual wisdom. Realizing that wholeness is not found in others, but remembered within yourself. Through solitude, you align with your higher self and begin to live from a place of authenticity and quiet power. You understand that being misunderstood by others is a small price to pay for being understood by your own soul. And so, walking alone becomes not a burden, but a sacred initiation into a deeper, freer, and more conscious version of life itself. 7. Calm presence and energetic strength. They carry an energy that feels like peace in human form. Calm, grounded, and quietly powerful. This presence is not built overnight. It's the result of years spent in solitude, listening rather than escaping, observing rather than reacting. While most people run from silence to drown their thoughts in noise, these individuals step into it to understand themselves more deeply. They have learned that solitude is not loneliness, but a sacred space where the soul reorders itself. It is there, in stillness, that they discover clarity, a knowing that does not shout, but whispers truth. As Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Their spiritual awakening is not dramatic. It's subtle, steady, and profound, like the rising sun illuminating everything it touches. They don't need to control the world, because they've learned to master their inner state. When chaos surrounds them, they remain centered, moving with intention instead of impulse. In every situation, their energy speaks before their words do. It's the kind of serenity that softens tension, quiets anger, and reminds others of their own capacity for peace. This comes from a place of deep self-knowledge, a spirituality that has been lived, not just learned. They understand that to be calm is not to be passive. It is to be rooted, unshaken by external storms. Like the surface of a still lake, their mind reflects the world with accuracy because the waters within are no longer disturbed. They've faced their own darkness, accepted their imperfections, and turned wounds into wisdom. The solitude that once felt like exile became their initiation, a rite of passage into awareness. While others fill the void with distractions, they allow emptiness to speak, and through that silence, they find depth. Their peace is not naive. It's forged through pain, patience, and honest introspection. You can sense their order in the midst of disorder, how they move deliberately, speak sparingly, and radiate understanding without needing to convince anyone. Jung once said, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." And that truth lives within them. Their quiet strength comes from knowing that life cannot always be controlled, but can always be understood. They have mastered the art of detachment without indifference, staying compassionate without losing themselves. This is the essence of spiritual maturity, to carry both light and shadow without being consumed by either. Their energy does not seek validation, it simply is. And when you stand close to them, your breathing slows, your mind settles, and for a moment, you remember what peace feels like. Such people remind us that real strength doesn't roar, it hums. It's not about dominance, but presence, the silent confidence that comes from alignment with truth. Their calm is contagious because it's authentic, and their spirituality is visible not through ritual, but through how they live, how they listen, how they love. They embody the balance between softness and power, between surrender and self-control. They teach us that peace is not the absence of noise, but the ability to remain whole within it. Their lives whisper a message the world desperately needs to hear: that stillness is not stagnation, and solitude is not emptiness. It is where the soul breathes, expands, and awakens. In that sacred quiet, they find themselves, and through them, others remember how to find their way back to themselves too. If you find this content touching your heart, please consider becoming a member to receive more in-depth lessons and direct support from me. 8. Wisdom earned in silence. Rather than chasing status, popularity, or external validation, people with few or no friends value meaning, growth, and emotional depth. They don't measure life by how many people surround them, but by how deeply they understand themselves. Their wisdom is born not from noise, but from silence, the kind that reveals what words often hide. When they sit alone, they're not escaping the world. They're studying it from within. In solitude, they listen to the quiet voice of their soul, where clarity replaces confusion and spirituality becomes a living experience, not just an idea. This stillness sharpens their awareness, allowing them to see what others overlook. It's in these silent hours that they discover who they truly are and what truly matters. They've learned that the courage to face oneself is far rarer than the ability to entertain others. Many people hide behind relationships, afraid of the mirror that solitude holds up. But those who embrace it walk into their own shadows and find light there. As Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." These individuals have awakened to the truth that real growth happens when you stop performing for the world and start listening to your inner teacher. Every wound becomes wisdom. Every setback, a sacred initiation into deeper understanding. Through their isolation, they refine the art of emotional alchemy, turning pain into purpose, confusion into clarity, and loneliness into spiritual development. They don't see solitude as emptiness, but as a sanctuary. While others chase constant stimulation, they find power in stillness. They know that wisdom doesn't grow in crowds. It grows in quiet reflection. In their company, there's an unspoken calm, a vibration of depth that makes others feel seen without words. Their spirituality is not about rituals or appearances, but about alignment, living with integrity, compassion, and awareness. They've discovered that peace doesn't come from external harmony, but from internal balance, from the acceptance of both light and shadow within themselves. In that acceptance lies liberation. These rare souls understand that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of self. They see through superficiality and are drawn to authenticity, truth, and essence. They've stopped seeking approval and started seeking meaning. Their lives move with intention rather than impulse, purpose rather than performance. When they speak, their words carry weight because they come from reflection, not reaction. Their depth intimidates some and inspires others, for they are mirrors of what most people are afraid to become whole, aware, and free. Their path is not easy, but it is sacred. Every moment alone becomes a step deeper into their awakening. They are living proof that solitude, when embraced, becomes a bridge to the divine, a place where one's heart learns to rest in truth. Their silence is not empty. It's full of life, wisdom, and quiet power. In a world addicted to noise, they remind us that stillness is not isolation, it's evolution. And the ones who master it become the quiet architects of spiritual awakening, carrying a kind of depth that only the brave ever reach. In the end, solitude isn't a flaw. It's often the sacred space where your deepest transformation begins. People with no friends aren't empty. They're full of unseen worlds, quiet wisdom, and a rare kind of depth that only silence can reveal. Remember, your journey inward is not isolation, it's initiation. If this message spoke to your soul, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos on self-discovery and spiritual awakening.